Yeah, isn't
That's
that
really
nice?
awful.
Oh,
I hate it.
Okay, let me call this first public hearing of the Milton Zoning Board of Appeals to order. The first application before us this evening is the application of John and Elizabeth Baldwin, dated August 18, 2014, for a variance from the terms of section 63 and 6C2 of chapter 10 of the general bylaws of the town of Milton, so as to reconstruct a single-story 17.6 by 11.5 detached garage at the rear of the existing single-family residence located at 39 Winthrop Street, Milton, which is located in a residential C district. The garage is set back 6.2 feet from the rear lot line, and the rear of the garage to be 7.8 feet from the right side lot line, rather than the 8 feet required by sections 63 and 6C2. That is all set forth in the application and on the plans on file with the board and open to public inspection. My name is Brian Hurley, and I'm the acting chairman for the three hearings this evening. With me are two board members. On my right is Virginia Donahue King, and on my left is Nicholas Gray, and together we will constitute the board for the purposes of this evening's hearings. Are the Baldwins here? You can come up and sit here if you like. You must be Elizabeth Baldwin, I take it? Okay. Sit down and make yourself comfortable. I'm just going to do a few sort of record-keeping things and just indicate what we have in the record at this point with respect to this application. Obviously, we have the application to the Board of Appeals dated August 18th, 2014. We also have a letter from Jay Bolio, the local building inspector, to the Baldwins dated August 11, 2014. We have several pages of plans showing the proposed garage and sketching out the distances for the property line. We have a site plan dated July 7, 2014 by C.S. Kelly Land Surveyors of Pembroke, Massachusetts, showing the existing garage at 39 Winthrop Street and the existing house and fence located at that same address. We have received a significant amount of correspondence with respect to this application from neighbors. It's all generally in the same form. I'm not going to read the particular letters, but I will list the names of the people who have all written in favor of the application. These letters are all dated October 2014, and again, they'll be part of the public record and available for inspection for anyone who's interested in reading the content. But as I said, they all speak generally in favor of the application. The writers are Alfred Benjamin of 29 Winthrop Street, Thomas, I'm not sure what this is, Boulay Fuller of 54 Audubon Road. I'm sorry, it's Dillon. Shannon Dillon of 54 Audubon Road. Mildred Cowan of 35 Winthrop Street. Paul
Cowan.
How you say that?
Paul Cowan.
Okay, of 35 Winthrop Street. Allison Mall of 29 Winthrop Street. Gregory CHIS of 20 Winthrop Street. I'm sorry, it's CHE. Robin Shee, CHE of 20 Winthrop Street. Kevin Moore Jr., Kevin Moore Jr. of 10 Winthrop Street. Patricia Westhaven, 11 Winthrop Street. Elaine Moore of 10 Winthrop Street. And Marianne Camo of 25 Winthrop Street. And as I said, all the folks agreed with and signed on to what is a form letter, and most added their own individual comments at the end of the letter, and they were all in support. And I take it that these are all the abutters to the property, or
They're
within?
all either on the same, within the same block.
Okay.
I do have 5 additional that just came to me.
Okay, if you give this to me, I'll just read the names into the record. And we just received this evening, again, it's the same form letter, but they're signed by Michael and Kimberly Carlozzi of 24 Winthrop Street, Katie Smith of 34 Winthrop Street, Paul Douglas, 51 Winthrop Street, and Ian Douglas of 51 Winthrop Street. And again, they all speak in support of the application. So the practice of the board and the procedure of the board is that we'll hear first from the applicant. You can explain to us, although we've read the written materials that have a pretty good idea what the application is about, but you can sort of explain the reasons for and the need for the variance. If there's anybody in the audience this evening who first wants to speak in support of the application, we'll invite them to do so. And if anyone does speak, they should come forward and sit at the table, give us your name and speak loudly so that we can get everything that you have to say. And at the conclusion of that portion, if there is any people who speak in support, we'll ask for people who might speak in opposition to the application. So with that long introduction and prelude, I turn it over to you to tell us about your application.
Hi, Elizabeth Baldwin, 39 Winthrop Street. What I'm hoping is that the intent of the bylaw is to kind of protect the neighborhood and keep it in its existing kind of pattern so that people aren't disturbed by what's happening, and to protect the neighbors. We're trying to use the existing pad. The garage won't be relocated in any manner. It's just that the garage was in such ill repair that it was falling over and needed to be redone. So it's not unique to the neighborhood. This neighborhood is a non-conforming neighborhood in its structures, and most of the garages are built closer than 8 feet of the property lines. So what I'm hoping is that allowing it to be rebuilt in its current location will maintain the feel and the living standard in the neighborhood rather than detract from it.
Do either of the board members have any questions for Ms. Baldwin?
I do. Did we have a letter from the people that are behind you? I guess they would be on Audubon Road. Did we have one from them?
The Mannings, they were going to write their own letter as opposed to the form letter. They thought it would have more impact. As far as they've communicated to me, they were in support of it, but he had said that he would write one and send it to you. And if that hasn't happened, then I have no information on that.
Okay. And to the right side of your house as you look at it, you have one from them as well?
Mr. Cowan is here, and he and his mother have both written the form, signed the form letter to it.
Okay, that's it.
Nick,
No, I don't have any questions.
So this is going to be on the same pad and have the same dimensions as the existing garage?
Yes,
And the setbacks will be the same as they are in the
exactly the
existing
same.
garage? Okay. Anyone in the audience that wants to speak in support of the application? Okay. Anyone who wants to speak in opposition or has any questions with respect to the application? No? Okay. Anything else you wanted to say?
No, that's it.
Well, with that, with no one here that wants to speak either in opposition and support, I'm going to close the public hearing, and as we're required to do under the open meeting law, we will deliberate in public with respect to the merits of the application, and ultimately we will vote in accordance with that discussion. I can start by saying that, first off, I'm not entirely certain that you need a variance for this application, but in any event, that's what we have in front of us. And given the fact that the dimensions are the same and it's simply a replacement of an existing structure with no increase in the nonconformity in terms of setbacks, I frankly see no reason not to approve this variance and would be inclined to vote in favor of it. Nick, your thoughts?
I have nothing to add except to say that I'm, for the reasons you stated, very much in favor of granting a variance in this case.
Virginia?
I agree.
Great. That was easy. So the vote is 3-0 in favor of the application. Obviously, we're required by statute to do a written decision, which we will, and we should be able to do it in fairly short order. And once we file that decision with the town clerk, then there's a 20-day appeal period. And even though no one has appealed from, no one has been here to oppose this, and the likelihood of anyone appealing is remote, the building inspector can't issue a building permit until that appeal period passes. And then once you get your variance, you want to talk to the building inspector about recording it and all that sort of procedural requirements that relate to the variance. But within a matter of maybe 3 to 5 weeks, you should be in a position to begin construction.
Thank you so much.
Okay. That was easy. I did. I mean, this is clearly going to be the easiest, so you want to take this one?
Sure. Unless you want an easy one.
I like to say that I am absolutely dying in here.
I know, it's wicked. Oh, can we? Yes.
Should have gone home and switched into a t-shirt.
I know. T-shirt and shorts that I was wearing.
All right, that's all yours, Virginia. So this is the entire file, including what we received tonight, so.
Okey doke.
Where are the cookies? No cookies?
Yeah, we've received no correspondence, have we? Oh, I guess we have.
Yeah, I believe that's a duplicate of the other one. And I
Okay.
already emailed it to you guys.
So it's just the one letter that we received?
Yes. She have it memorized by now.
Okay. I'm going to open the second public hearing of the evening of the Milton Zoning Board of Appeals. Our second hearing this evening is on the application of Thomas P. O'Neill Jr., who is the applicant, dated August 18, 2014, for a variance and special permit from the terms of Section 3.A and Section 4 of Chapter 10 of the zoning bylaw. The applicant looks to be allowed to change the existing use at the site at 475 Adams Street in Milton from medical offices with one residential unit, that use permitted under variance cases 290, 737, and 978 on file with the Milton Zoning Board. And that change would be to a mixed use of two independent professional offices with one residential unit, and a related request for a special permit to demolish a one-story portion of the building at the rear and to replace that demolished portion with a two-story addition, and further to enlarge the existing parking area to include 3 spaces for residential and 8 spaces for the professional office at the existing multi-commercial building located at 475 Adams Street, which is located in a Residence C district. So there's 2 separate forms of zoning relief under this application, a use variance as well as a special permit. The file that's presently before us consists of a number of documents, including the application, a letter to Attorney Sheffield, Robert Sheffield. Attorney Sheffield is here this evening. That letter is dated August 13th, 2014, from our building commissioner, Joseph Prondark, indicating that the variance and special permits are required for this application. There's also a one-page site plan dated June 4, 2014, which was prepared by Robert Hannigan Associates. There's a set of plans, sheets G1, G2, E1, A1, and A2, showing the proposed site and buildings and all the details concerning the application. And these were prepared by Richard, I'm reading this name. Mr. Sheffield.
Maskowitz.
Excuse me?
Maskowitz.
Okay, Mr. Maskowitz. And they are, as I said, they are in a number of sheets. We have one letter with respect to the application in the file. That's a letter dated October 15, 2014. It's addressed to the board. It's written by a Martha McGowan Marlowe, who is apparently the owner of the property at 16 to 18 Babcock Street. And she, just to summarize the letter, which again will be on file with the board, she is in opposition to this proposal and cites a number of concerns, including density, traffic, and the impacts of the increase in size of the parking area. So that's what the record consists of presently before the board in connection with this application. Tonight the board is constituted by myself, Brian Hurley, as acting chairman. With me this evening to my right is Nicholas Gray, a board member of the Milton Zoning Board of Appeals, and to my right, Virginia Donahue, and the 3 of us will constitute the board for the purposes of this application. The practice and procedure of the board is to hear from the applicant first, to explain the details of and the reasons for the application. Then in turn, we will hear from members of the public first, any who would be here this evening to speak in support of the application, and then to speak in opposition or have questions concerning the application. We ask anyone who chooses to speak this evening, and we encourage you all to do so, to come forward, to sit at the table. This is being broadcast, and so we want to hear what you have to say, and ask you to give us your name and address, and tell us what you have to say about the proposal. So with that introduction, as I previously recognized Mr. Sheffield, who's here on behalf of the applicant, Mr. O'Neill, this evening, and Mr. Sheffield, I turn the floor over to you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm pleased to represent Tom O'Neill, who has recently purchased property I am an attorney with offices in East Milton Square. I also live in Milton, and I am familiar with the property that we're talking about. The property was the site of an ancient home and farmhouse built back in 1867. It sits on Adams Street, and next to it, facing it on your left, is the home and office of Attorney Bob Juvenville, and to the right is the Church of Our Savior that is located there. This property I researched back to 1962 and found that at that time Dr. McAuliffe was authorized by the Board of Appeals to have his medical offices there. When I submitted my request to the building commissioner, he found that back in 1948, and ever since then, this has been used for medical offices. Most recently, for the past 26 years, it has been used by Dr. Carr and Dr. Mahoney. And they've used it for 26 years, and then due to changes in the practice of medicine, they removed themselves to Crown Colony, where they practice today. I realize the neighbors are concerned about a number of things. Number one is the traffic on Adams Street, particularly where it comes from the Wood Street extension, which is across the expressway. That's a very, very difficult and challenging area. The town has spent considerable time, effort, and money in studying that, and they believe they have something that should be constructed in the next couple of years that will address the traffic concerns in that area. However, it has traditionally been a very, very heavy traffic area. The Bob Juvenville actually bought this property. And he bought it because he found that backing out of his driveway, and he has a very relatively narrow driveway, backing out into Adams Street was taking his hands in his life every time he did so. So what he did was he bought this entire property, carved off 30 feet next to where his house is, and will expand the width of his driveway so he will be able to turn around and come out facing front. He thinks that that will add at least 10 years to his life. The remainder of the property was purchased by Tom O'Neill, and he plans to use that, as it has been in the past, for a business purpose, and this would be having Success Real Estate, which he operates now on Randolph Avenue, come to Adams Street rather than its current Randolph Avenue location. The building has not been updated or improved for many decades. He wants to put some effort into it, put some money into it, and to retain the historic character of the building while bringing it much more up to date than it is today. The fact is that there will probably be significant less traffic impact. There'll be significantly less parking requirements. There'll be significantly less people coming to the office than occurred when Doctors Carr and Mahoney were there. The real estate practice today, nobody wants to come and sit down and speak to the realtor. They want to go to their proposed house, and that's where the action is, the discussion is, et cetera. And so when we're talking about parking and traffic and more congestion, this will probably be as low an input factor of any type of business or medical use that has been used in this building for since 1948. The parking spaces, there are going to be 3 for residential use, and that will be on one side of the building. And there will be 8 on the other side of the building, which will be for the business use. Factually, 8 are required by the zoning bylaw. If the Board of Appeals saw fit to reduce that to 5 parking spaces, we believe that would meet the needs of the proposed office. But if we're going to go in accordance with the zoning bylaw, which would require 1 parking space for every 250 square feet, it would require a total of 8 parking spaces. The other thing is, as the plan shows, this is going to be shielded from view from the street, the parking area, and it is going to be, if the residents that are behind the 475 Adams Street wish, we could either put up arborvitaes or vinyl fencing or something to increase their privacy and retain the characteristics on Hollow Street that are now, in fact, even enhance them. And we'd be glad to do that. Right now, the building at 475 backs up to within 3 feet of the side lot line and Hollow Street neighbors. We plan to take down the garage, which was built many, many decades ago, and we hope that we can take it down before it falls down, because it's very close to that today. But we would increase that from 3 feet to 18.5 feet setback. So that would, again, give more land area, et cetera, to the view of the property. The fact is that there is traffic on not only Adams Street, but Hollow Street is used as a cut-through by quite a few people. So much so that if I lived on Hollow Street, I would object to every car that goes by. But we can't do too much about that, other than that the improvements that are being made by the town and being planned by the town take that into consideration. And with the traffic improvements, they project that the use of Hollow Street will no longer be as bad as it is today. Again, this is a building that has been used like we are proposing to use it now for 60-something years. And so it's not really a change in use, except that it's a change in use from a more intensive use of doctor's offices to a less intensive use of a real estate office. I would be glad to address any questions, and I hope the board would see fit to continue this situation which has existed since 1948.
Thank you, Mr. Sheffield. Mr. Gray, do you have any questions for Mr. Sheffield?
Not off the top of my head.
Virginia, do you have any questions?
I do. What is the other professional office use that's proposed?
The idea would be to have a lawyer in it, a single sole practitioner or something like that, but that's, we want it more open-ended, so if the lawyer decides not to practice there, we'd have another, maybe a CPA or something along that line.
Not right now, no.
I don't have any questions for the moment. I think I'd like to hear from others that are here this evening. Are there anyone here that would like to speak in support of this application? Okay. Anyone that would like to either ask questions of the applicant or speak in opposition to the application?
Yeah.
Sorry? Okay.
Opposition.
All right, why don't we do it in order then? If you could just bring the chair up to the table, if you wouldn't mind. You're going to go first?
Why don't you sit right here, and
That's great.
you be in front of the mic then.
Just give us your name and address, if you will, and then speak up loudly so we can hear what you have to say.
My name is Jessica Sergi, and I live at 462 Adams Street, which is on the corner of Adams and St. Agatha. I received the notice for today's hearing, and at first I thought similarly to what you had just said, that maybe it wouldn't make that much of a difference. But then when you look closer at the application, actually I haven't had the chance to look at the application itself, but when you look at the notice, it does appear that this is a significant change from the prior use. So I went back to the zoning bylaws to see how in a residential zone C zone this could have occurred to begin with. And though I haven't seen what was decided in 1962, it looks like the only way there could be any kind of professional use in a residential zone would be if there was a resident, which I don't think that you mentioned anyone actually living at the unit. So my question is, how is this residential? How does it remain residential when you've only discussed 2 offices being put there? So that would be one question.
Can I address that?
I don't know the procedure, but.
Sure, that's fine. Go ahead. Let's take them as they
Milton
come.
is basically a residential community.
Correct.
Everything is basically residence A, B, C, D, whatever. And this happens to be residence C, and it is primarily oriented on the fact that it has the smaller lot size requirements than would be in, say, a residence A.
Okay.
When I was representing the golf course, I had to look at what was the zoning for the Milton dump. And the zoning is, it could only be used for residential, single-family housing. And that is what Milton zoning is all about. There are numerous exceptions that have each one been considered by the Board of Appeals, and it only is allowed to happen outside of the business district, and there's very, very little business district in Milton, if it is done with the consent and approval of the Board of Appeals.
Okay, so I guess my question is, where in the residential zoning bylaws is this having 2 professional, independent professional offices allowed?
It's not.
It's
Okay.
not.
Right,
That's why we're
and
here.
so, but even in the bylaws, though, it looks like with special permits, you still can't have
two independent professional
In order
offices.
to have this proposed use in this district, you have to have a variance.
Right.
Which is a statutory procedure, which basically says, even though your bylaw doesn't allow for this use, you can, if you meet the statutory criteria, do it by variance. And that, apparently, I've not looked at the history of this either, but apparently, historically, that's what has happened. The
Right.
board has granted variances in the past, but since this is a new use,
Right.
and it's not just an extension of a pre-existing non-conforming use, they need a new variance in order to go forward. And
Right.
so that's why we're here.
Right, so but the new, as you said, it is a totally new use, because now it would be two independent professional buildings, where my understanding of what was allowed previously is a residence where a physician or a dentist was allowed to
This
practice.
is tabula rasa. This is if we were starting all over again.
Okay.
And this site had nothing on it.
Gotcha.
And they're coming in saying, okay, we've got this piece of land, we'd like to do X. And that's what's before us tonight. And there are statutory criteria for us to follow.
Right.
In order to meet the variance standard, and they're extremely difficult. And they're to be sparingly granted.
And the zoning bylaws, so maybe you can answer this question, it looks like it says that you can only change the use if it would not substantially be detrimental to the use of other property in the neighborhood?
That's one of the standards.
Okay, so that still remains even though it's under the
Yes.
statute. So, that being said, I think it would be substantially detrimental to the neighborhood.
Shocking that you would say
Yes.
that.
And I have a daughter who goes to St. Agatha's. I live on the corner there, so I know the traffic. I know there are kids going back and forth continuously. And, one big concern is, I know that you've said there's always been traffic, and I'm sure I haven't lived here that long, but I do think we don't know yet what the traffic at the bank is going to bring to Adams Street. So I think that's a big concern, because that hasn't even opened fully yet, and the construction isn't done. So having that open and then having this large construction across the street with two independent professional buildings where we don't even know the two professions that will be there for sure, is a big concern for all of my neighbors. And actually, I have a letter here, and I think another neighbor has a letter from someone else
Okay.
voicing that concern. So I think that was about all I have to say.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else want to speak?
Yeah, real quick.
Hi, my name is Martin Shields. I live at 26 St. Agatha Road, and I've lived there for about 7 years. My concerns are the same as Jess's. I have 3 young kids. I'd like to be able to visit other parts of East Milton, but I feel like it's, with 3 kids, 3 young boys, it's very dangerous to go walking out there, even if I have them chained to my hip. Bringing more business to where there is basically nothing happening right now. While there could be a business there, bringing more business and more traffic to that spot, scares me even more. I didn't get a notice. I'm not in a butter, but I'm going to deal with that traffic every day for the rest of my life, probably. I'm going to deal with people honking their horns, trying to get around my kids going through traffic. This has happened. The average number of cars that I have to wait to fly past me going across that Wood Road extension is 5. And I go up there quite a bit, but I'm afraid to. And I'm afraid that when I let my kids grow up and get a little bigger, get some independence, they're going to want to ride their bikes across there. And that scares me very much. So I agree with Jess. I think we have to wait and see what this bank does to traffic. I think that's going to be horrible as it is. I didn't get any kind of special notice about that either. I just kind of heard it, and then all of a sudden there was construction going on, which the boys love, but I don't. In addition, that light across from right out in front of the post office, if you dare to press the button and actually trust it and go ahead through it, because people fly through there all the time, and I know this is being addressed by some other traffic study thing. If you press the button at that light and you've got people coming out of this new new business and people coming out of the bank. You've got a traffic jam there that not only is dangerous for everybody, further down where I am, St. Agatha Road, I'm never going to be able to get basically out of my driveway. You know, I'm 4 houses down from the end of the street. So I'm worried about the safety, I'm worried about the congestion. I don't think that there's going to be even less traffic. I don't know where that, where that study is, but that just blows my mind. So that's all I had to say about that. I disagree. I strongly oppose the plan, and I have a letter here from another neighbor who opposes the plan as well.
Great, if I could take that, thank you.
Thank you.
We have had 3 separate letters given to us by hand this evening, each in opposition to the application. The first is from Thomas and Amy Caldwell. They apparently live at 103 St. Agatha Road, and in several paragraphs they outlined the reasons for their opposition to the application, which are, just quickly scanning it, seem to be substantially similar, no surprise, to what our 2 sort of live testimonial persons have said this evening. The second letter is from Michael Fahey of 109 St. Agatha Road, again, in opposition to the application based on traffic, parking, and difficulty under existing conditions walking in the square. And then finally, the third letter is from Michael and Margaret Walsh of 269 Edge Hill Road. And again, they write in opposition for substantially the same reasons as in the previous letters and in the testimony before the board this evening. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak this evening in opposition?
I would.
Okay.
No, I defer to the woman.
That's fine.
Please.
We'll get to each and every one of you, so it doesn't matter what order you come in, so.
Good evening. My name is Carol Kearns, and I live at 2426 Hollis Street, which is actually in a butter. I appreciate the letter that we received today. I am across the street from Martha McGowan Marlowe, whose letter you referenced earlier. I just want to begin by saying we have a beautiful neighborhood there for anybody who's driven up Hollis Street in Babcock. And the surrounding neighbors there, several of who are with me, I've lived in the neighborhood since 1968. Martha's family owned the house for 50 years, so between 20 and 50 years our neighbors have lived in that neighborhood, and we cherish the neighborhood, and those houses are our treasures, naturally. I certainly favor property improvement, but we are a neighborhood under siege, and I think anybody who knows that neighborhood knows it. We're coming off the shock of the bank going in with a neon blue light shining into our neighborhood without notice. I want to thank Mr. Prondak and Bill with the last name from the planning board, I'm not sure. Clark, who were pretty responsive to us about that. The light is dimmed now, but never in my wildest dreams did I believe the town of Milton would allow blue neon lighting to shine into a neighborhood next to St. Agatha's. Mr. Jubenville next door did purchase the property as was described, and that has all been cleared. An old growth, high evergreen tree was removed and opened Hollis Street entirely to the pollution, noise, and light of the square. Suddenly the square is in Hollis Street, and he has flattened that all out. I know he's planning to blacktop that whole area. I believe you described the reason why, and he has too, to turn around there, but he also cleared the area behind 9 Hollis Street, which is right behind his house, so that it's coming right out the driveway onto Hollis Street. And I understand the intention is to blacktop that entire area from the pavers. So that, to us, is very disturbing, and we're concerned about the blacktop perhaps continuing entirely from Mr. Jubenville's property right over to the, what I would call the Red House property that I know Mr. O'Neill has bought. So we don't want to see Paradise paved and become a parking lot, naturally. We are concerned about the green barrier. I appreciated hearing about the concerns for the neighbors, but I think arborvitae would not even begin to block the square. We need tall growth trees there. The barn that is proposed to be removed is an old structure. It's not a garage, though. It's a very tall two-story barn that blocks the square from the Hollis Street neighborhood. So removal of that barn would be kind of a tragedy for us unless it was improved with some kind of a height that blocks it.
We're not
Please.
talking about removing that barn at all.
Oh.
We're talking only about removing the garage that goes right up to
To
the
the
Hollis Street
property.
property line.
Oh, okay.
And that's a different situation, and that looks
So
like it's ready
would the
to fall.
barn be staying right up against the property line, that
No,
tall
the
barn there?
The barn is 30 feet, 20 feet anyway from the property line, and there are no plans as far as that's concerned. And before that could be altered, changed, or whatnot,
Right.
I would have to go to the Historic Commission, and you would be involved and invited to give your comments, et cetera.
I know
That, as far as
I
I'm
know.
concerned, is an historic barn.
Okay, I'm sure the neighbors would be pleased to know that, because that creates some barrier.
Yes.
The tall tree barrier is important, but the traffic that was referenced here earlier, my father went to Dr. Mahoney for about 60 years, and so I know that it's generally one person at a time there, 11 spaces coming in and out. I think our concern is the bank and this, even since the bank was under construction. As you can just imagine, and it's kind of crazy to us that this is in there, that the traffic exiting in and out of those two places blocks up the traffic at St. Agatha's and at the light. Hence, everybody gets very frustrated, and because I have a little radar gun from business, they squeal up Babcock doing about 45 miles an hour around that corner, 50 miles an hour. I clocked 2 people only a week ago. So we are just getting a constant stream of traffic on a street that has 19 children under the age of 8 on Hollis Street. We're extremely concerned about the traffic back up there. And so I think we're looking for the town to give some relief on that and some planning and any zoning variances that would protect a long-standing neighborhood that's full of children and people whose property values and quality of life is of high concern to them. And so I don't think I've taken up enough time, and I'm just looking to see if I had any questions, but I think 11 spaces over the one trickling person that would go in to see Dr. Mahoney is a little different and is going to drive ever more traffic up Hollis and Babcock, and that's of great concern to us. So thank you for your time. So.
You've waited a long time.
Hello.
Good evening.
So my name's Brian Powers. I live at 19 Andrews Road in Milton, right around the corner. So I'm definitely opposed to this, and I'm concerned that East Milton Square is starting to creep into the residential area. And so one thing is, you know, it was zoned as partially commercial back in '62, but I don't think we should compound that mistake by making it bigger there, especially with the bank that's going across the street. As was just referenced, we just had a neighborhood party about a month ago, and there were 17 kids under 10 years old running around in that neighborhood, all those streets, and just additional parking, additional traffic is just going to be a lot more dangerous. You know, and you kind of glossed over that this business will be a low-traffic business, but you don't even know what the second business is going to be yet, right? So there's no way to ensure us that it's going to be a low-traffic business. In the first one, you say less people come to this real estate office, but I mean, there's no evidence of that either, right? Do you have evidence that's going to be less traffic now than there was when the medical office was there?
I would expect it is insofar as...
Yeah, but is there any evidence, or you're just guessing?
Well, I'm familiar with medical offices, and usually they have a number of patients, and it usually...
So versus real estate office?
versus real estate, and I think it would be a less intensive use. I'm not
Okay.
saying that there will be no parking whatsoever. I'm not saying that there's no traffic problem. There's a horrendous traffic problem. I'm not saying that there's no cut-through problem. Hollis Street is very, very endangered by
Yeah.
the cut-through.
Well, one of your arguments was that this should be a low-traffic area, but like I said, you don't even know what the second business is going to be yet, so you can't promise that's going to be a low-traffic business, right?
I would assume it is, but I can't promise it.
Right. And this is going to be a bigger property than it currently is?
No, I don't believe so. One
We don't
thing
know yet.
is, it will be residential. There will be somebody living there. I like the idea of that, and I think it's more attractive to the neighborhood.
All right.
And that you have a vibrant community, and I think that it will remain so, and this will enhance it rather than, having a dilapidated building. It will be brought up to date, and I think it will improve the market values, but I'm not a market value expert.
Yeah, I disagree with that. And I think that the traffic increase, especially with the bank going across, it just feels, like I said, that the commercial part is starting to creep into the residential part. And one of the reasons I picked Milton is that it is very residential, not a lot of commercial base, which is what I liked it. So I don't like that it's starting to creep into where I live right around the corner. So I just wanted to voice my concern, and that's it.
Well, remember that the building across the street, back 35 years ago, was considered to be, a bank would be, and this is what the Board of Appeals decision says, that a bank would be an appropriate business there. It also says that no retail can be allowed, such as a drugstore or, a 5 and 10 back there, or a supermarket or something. But I think the bank will not be a negative. It will, again, improve the area.
Yeah, I just don't want to compound, a mistake was made 35, 40, 50 years ago by making it commercial. I don't think we should compound that mistake by making it bigger in that area. That's all, that's my concern.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Anyone else? I know you want to go. Go ahead, please.
Thank you.
You've been very patient.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thomas Caldwell from 103 Snagatha Road, town meeting member, precinct 6. I've been asked to come here by not only my neighbors, but also other members of my precinct, whom I represent at town meeting, to voice their opposition to this project. Unfortunately, there are other people who couldn't be here due to childcare issues, job obligations, etc. And it just as Mr. Sheffield indicated, I am a lifelong resident of Milton, lifelong resident of St. Agatha's Road. So a little bit of history in terms of that property. I know we've referenced the old Sheldon building, the new bank, and also the old McAuliffe doctor's offices. In my understanding from town meeting back in '72, Sheldon attempted to he asked town meeting to make that a commercial zoned area, which was rejected wholly by town meeting. And I believe an exemption was given based upon the specifics of the parcel abutting the new highway. Across the street, I know when Mr. McAuliffe purchased that property, Dr. McAuliffe, he resided at that property and also had a dental his medical practice down below. He subsequently moved to Cary Avenue, and his son resided above. And he continued his practice, as did then subsequently Mahoney, Carr, and Dr. Daniel Driscoll, who I see as my primary care physician, and I saw him up at that location on every Friday when he was there. And I know that no one was living there at that time. It was very low use of that property, and I know Attorney Jubenville next door does reside, or claim that as his residence, thus obviously coming in conformity with the zoning laws of the town. My concern is with this new parcel, based upon what I've seen, is that this is a dramatic change from what the town has allowed in the past. These are people who live at their place of business, who practice their business on the first floor, and very low profile. I think the concerns of the residences, and especially the individuals behind on Hollis and the neighborhoods behind, and also St. Agatha's Road, is just the increase in traffic and use. East Milton Square is under siege, to use a strong word, from traffic, cut-through traffic. We haven't seen a lot of in terms of the new plan, how we're going to try to attempt to confront these issues. But I know as a resident there with 2 young children, it's very difficult to move about the square. And I think when you're adding rental property, perhaps, I don't know who will be living there, but also 2 new businesses, I think it's I'm concerned about that. And I think that in terms of the variances, in terms of our bylaws and under the Mass General laws, this is a dramatic shift from the little small practice that was at the McAuliffe doctor office. This is something, we're adding parking, we're adding a rental property, we're just adding a lot more. And I know in speaking to several area residents that, you know, they're very concerned about this. And I don't know, maybe this is a slippery slope. Where are we going to go? Are we going to be opening up the rest of Milton or the rest of East Milton, perhaps up behind the square on Franklin Street to these types of mixed use with these variances? So my concern is actually, does this comply with the Mass General laws? And also, does it comply with the general bylaws of the town of Milton? I think we're really detracting from what Milton is. We're a residential community. We have that rural flavor that I think is unique to just unique in general to many towns that abut the city of Boston. And I'd like to hold on to that. And I know that the people I've spoken to in my neighborhood, you know, they feel the same way. And we're not saying we're anti-business, and I don't think we're trying to say anybody can't make a living and, you know, buy a place and run a small operation. We're not saying that. I just think there's concerns about the size of what is proposed here at a very low-key type of building, which has been very low-key for decades. And they've been very good neighbors. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Sheffield.
Anyone else would like to speak? Yes.
My name is Anne Marie O'Shea, and I've lived on Hollis Street, 34 Hollis Street, for 23 years. I love the neighborhood. It's just a combination of kids growing older and a new group coming up, well-established. I've listened to everyone here, and I feel the same way. But there's a few other things I'd like to add. I've already seen an increase in traffic with the new bank, and I'm right there, coming out every morning, coming home at night. Attorney Jubenville, with the increase of his parking, there's been a lot of change there. The green space is almost gone. And thirdly, 2 new potential commercial zones. It's making the encroachment almost impossible for us. So having said that, I think that the green barrier would be very, very important if this goes forward. And as Carol said, the older growth trees, higher trees. Again, serious concern for traffic and noise and overall air pollution. And lastly, protecting our neighborhood. So important. So established. We need to keep that the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Mr. Sheffield, did you have, I'm sorry.
My name is Alexander Amanchuku. I live at 45 Hollis. I just need to tell you a story. A colleague of mine moved in from Switzerland, and he was looking to buy. There were some properties in my street that were for sale. I invited him over to eat and see what is around my neighborhood. So he came up after we ate, he looked through the window and he said, "The traffic is horrible. I'm not moving in here." And that's not the Milton I had in mind. There's no way the lawyer was making all these excuses that it's been used since 1940s as an office, but they've never asked to increase the size. They've never done so.
That's correct.
Okay, so there's no way you are telling me that you are going to increase the size or the usage of this property and not have an increased traffic. Not today, not in this age.
Okay.
So and who is the property owner? You are the lawyer. So why isn't he talking to us?
Oh, wait a minute. The lawyer?
No, I know you are the lawyer. Who is the property owner? Why isn't he talking
He's right
to
here.
us? Okay. So
I want to tell you, I'm fully invested in the residential piece of it because Mary and I were thinking about downsizing fairly soon, and we could very well move in there ourselves.
That was Mr. O'Neill speaking. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It's not,
And
it's
I
not,
am a person who does first-class work. I only hire first-class people, and the property will be immensely improved over what it is now. After all, you could have me, or you could have the Sons of Anarchy there.
it's not uncommon for lawyers to speak on behalf of applicants before the board, and that's a good thing. Being a lawyer myself, I'm happy to see lawyers always, always employed for these missions, but, so it's not unusual.
trust me, I don't have anything against lawyers.
I understand.
I work with them daily.
I understand your concerns about traffic and just the increase.
And the other thing I want to say is that my bedroom, when I open my windows, the noise, I don't know if anyone in the street has heard of that. They use that over the weekend. It looks like it's a drag race on that street. I don't know what the city is waiting for. I've gone back and forth with Carol on that, with the traffic on that street. But I'm in no position. I want to be on the record that I'm in no position to what you're trying to do. So.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Mr. Sheffield?
I think that from what we've heard so far, it appears that there is very significant neighborhood reservation, to say the least. And I think it is incumbent upon the applicant to see if we can meet with the neighbors and come up with something that is satisfactory to the owner, satisfactory to the neighbors, and have the neighbors' support. I hate to have anything go in which has very significant neighborhood opposition. It's not, this is too small a town. I would suggest if we could that we could adjourn for 30 days or something, and the owner would get together, the architect would get together, the neighbors can get together, and see if we can come up with something that meets the needs of all three. We recognize that the Hollis Street, Babcock Street neighborhood is fantastic neighborhood. It's a nice neighborhood for children to grow up in. It's a beautiful section of town. We do not want to do anything that would impair this at all. And we would not like to open something in which the neighbors are resentful or misunderstanding or anything. I think this would be worthwhile, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
So you're moving to extend the public hearing for, not to close the public hearing, but to continue it for a period of 30 days?
About that, yeah.
Well, we can discuss that motion. And I'll go first. I think it's important to say, and I happen to be blessed with being the chairman of the board for the first 40B application that's ever hit the town of Milton.
No, it's the second.
Okay, well, it seems like it's the only one. And I made the point at the last public hearing session of that application that we are not a planning agency. As a Board of Appeals, it's not our job to plan. We don't do zoning changes. We take individual applications and we try our best to apply the law to those applications. At least that's the approach of, I know, the three members that are here tonight. I'm always happy and certainly encourage people to try and reach accommodations and concessions with respect to a particular plan. But if we continue this hearing, I want everyone to understand that even if the neighborhood reaches a consensus on this, that doesn't necessarily mean that the board is going to approve it. The reality is, and I can only speak for myself on this, but I have done zoning litigation for 35 years, so I'm very familiar with the variance cases and the variance standard. And the reality is this doesn't meet the variance standard. So we would.
I haven't gone into that.
Well, there's no amount of convincing you could do to me that's going to convince me that a use variance it meets the statutory criteria. It just doesn't in this case. So I'm going to be very skeptical about whether I would vote to approve this under any set of circumstances. I just want to be honest with you up front about that. So I encourage you to meet for 30 days. You can come back in what I think is very unlikely scenario that you're going to come back with uniform neighborhood approval on this, because I think these problems, frankly, are intractable. But if you do, we will certainly be willing to listen to that. But I don't want to create any false impressions here that if I vote in favor of this continuance, that you should implicitly think that somehow I'm going to vote in favor of this, because my present inclination is not to, and just want to be candid about that. But I'll let the other board members speak to this.
I'm happy to take 30 days and have you meet with the folks and decide. I mean, I'm concerned a little bit about the condition of that building, and I do recognize that it's a very difficult piece of property to take care of. And if there's a way for that building to be improved in a way that's, consistent with the use of the neighborhood, I'd like to at least examine that possibility. So I'd be in favor of at least taking 30 days and seeing if that can be the case.
Virginia?
That's fine by me as well, with the proviso that we still might not grant it.
I understand that.
So I would be happy to.
Okay, then I think the vote then is unanimous, that we'll continue the public hearing for approximately 30 days to a date, Mary, that makes sense. Yes.
Just in approaching the neighbors, if you could also give notice to those people who wrote letters, and so they could be involved in the discussion as well.
Definitely
As
will.
well as Mrs. Marlowe.
Mrs. Marlowe?
Mrs. Marlowe in Atlanta needs to be in on it.
Mrs. Marlowe in Atlanta.
She wrote the letter.
Oh, okay.
First one we got.
I don't know what's good for your schedule, so.
Not Thursday.
That's the week of the 17th, that's about a month.
I've got a crazy week that week. I'm busy all 3 nights, so unless it were a Monday.
Monday the 17th, can we do it then? I mean, it's open for us to do it.
Not in the blue, that would be here again.
We'll be here in this room, that's fine. All right, so Monday, November 17th at 7:30 here in the Corona Conference Room, is that?
It's not Veterans Day, is it?
No.
Okay.
Okay, everyone have that? Monday, November 17th, 7:30 in this room, we'll meet again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you to you all. Yep. Sorry? Okay.
Nice meeting you too. We'll see you again. We'll see you on the 17th. Proactive, moving forward. That was good. That's the only way, that's the only way you solve
Package?
Yeah, did I stick it in with this?
We go first.
Yes.
Should I wait till you're ready, or should I pass this stuff out, or wait for,
Let's just wait for Mary to come back, okay, if you don't mind. Okay, you represent. Okay. Yeah, no, I haven't yet, but it's next. You're welcome to sit down. Don't-
you're representing the Oldfields? Package for you.
Mary, is Mr. Prondak going to be here tonight? Is he? Okay. Good. Okay. Okay.
Based on this TV camera.
Are you ready for the minute?
Oh my God, it's awful. Okay.
And I can see.
Mary?
Yeah. The package for- So when we start, do we just go over the inventory?
Yeah, just give me a second. Why don't we open the public hearing? I'm going to call to order the third public hearing of the evening, which was scheduled for 8 p.m., and I apologize that we were delayed in getting started. The last hearing took a little bit longer than I think we had scheduled it for. This third hearing this evening is on the application of Philip Johanning, the appellant of 23 Parkwood Drive, and that application was dated August 18th, 2014, pursuant to Section 9D of the Milton zoning bylaw and General Laws, Chapter 48, Sections 8 and 15, appealing a determination by the Milton Building Commission dated August 10, 2014, that their nursery use is not in violation of recent Board of Appeals decisions or a court, it says inspection, or probably a court decision or injunction. Mr. Johanning resides at 23 Parkwood Drive, which abuts the property owned and operated by Thayer Nursery. Mr. Johanning contends that Thayer Nursery continues to operate a commercial landscaping business in contravention of the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals and a June 10th injunction issued by the Norfolk Superior Court. The Milton Building Inspector advises that he has found, based on a number of unannounced visits to the property, that Thayer Nursery was in compliance with both the decision of the Milton Zoning Board of Appeals and the terms and provisions of the Norfolk Superior Court injunction. And Mr. Johanning has appealed from that decision dated August 4, 2014 by the building commissioner. At this point, prior to receiving some additional information I know you want to give us tonight, the application consists of the record consists of the notice that I've just read, an application dated August 18, 2014 by Mr. Johanning, a letter from Mr. Prondak to Mr. Johanning and John Rowe dated August 4th, 2014, advising that he believes that the operation was in compliance with these particular orders and injunctions that we've just referenced, and that's the record that we have at this point, I believe. Mary, I think there's some additional information that Mr. Johanning wants to present to us this evening. And if you would, perhaps you could describe what it is, rather than
Good evening, my name is John Rowe from 23 Parkwood Drive. What we've put in the package for the board members is the building inspector's determination that Thayer Nursery is in compliance of recent Suffolk or Norfolk County cease and desist order, as well as orders by this board, one in February of 2014 and the other in September of 2013. So as Mr. Hurley and Mrs. King are very familiar with the case, I've put these things in here for Mr. Gray's benefit, as he may not be as familiar. This seems to be a merry-go-round that we're on. Every few months we're in front of this board. So the first exhibit is Mr. Prondak's letter. The second exhibit is the cease and desist order issued by Judge Wilson of Norfolk Superior Court dated June 10th, 2014, in which he orders Thayer Nursery to cease and desist all landscaping activities, as were ordered by this board in their September 2013 ruling, which is the next attachment. And then the fourth attachment is the Board of Appeals ruling and cease and desist order for the firewood distribution business that has been operating on the property. And then the fifth exhibit is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Land Court judgment in the Coulter case by Judge Sands, which is the premise of this board's decisions in 2013 and 2014, as well as Norfolk Superior Court's decision. And what this is all based on is the town zoning bylaws do not allow for this commercial activity to take place with a variance from this board. It requires a use variance, in which Thayer does not have. So, and then the final exhibits are pictures of Thayer Nursery taken from Forest Street, taken from Pam Lepori's property, and taken from Forest Street, as well as Briarbrook Road, various landscaping jobs. So I'd like to note that Mr. Prondak's determination letter dated August 4th, in which he indicated that Thayer Nursery was in compliance with the cease and desist order issued by Norfolk Superior Court, as well as the cease and desist orders issued by this board in September. I'd like to note that Mr. Prondak only visited Thayer Nursery on one occasion, and that was on June 24th of 2014. He did visit a site in Canton where it appears that Thayer Nursery had stored some landscaping equipment. However, we do not believe that they have moved their landscaping business, and they continue to operate the landscaping business as well as operate the firewood distribution business on the property. I'd like to go through the pictures. Okay, so the first picture is of the 5 dump trucks that are owned by Thayer Nursery, parked at 270 Hillside Street, which they're parked there permanently. They're not parked anyplace else, and these are the dump trucks that are used in the landscaping business. There's also a pile of mulch that is used in the landscaping business. So that's pictures 1, 2, 3. Picture number 4, you can see a flatbed trailer that's used to put equipment on, such as front-end loaders to take to landscaping jobs. And then the next picture, you can see 2 dump trucks, the mulch pile, as well as an excavator that is also used on the landscaping jobs. We do not believe that a nursery requires this type of equipment. And apparently, this board's orders, I think came to that same conclusion. However, the building commissioner, well, I guess he does not agree with the board. So anyway, if you put the pictures together, you can count all 5 dump trucks. The next picture is a pile of loam used in the landscaping business, this one with a tree in front of it. The next picture is a pile of construction materials. There's crushed stone. You see in the picture that's used in the landscaping business, there's paver stones as well as cinder blocks. And this is also on the property at 270 Hillside Street. These pictures were all taken on August 17, 2014. The next picture is of a Thayer Nursery dump truck and an employee. I don't know if he's unloading or taking the trailer off of the truck. And this is taken in front of 80 Briarbrook Street. This picture was taken on August 11th at approximately 7:30 in the morning. At my home, I heard the dump truck leave Thayer Nursery at 270 Hillside Street. And I went out, and it went from 270 Hillside Street down, well, actually, it's the Forest Street entrance to 270 Hillside Street. Proceeded down Forest, down Parkwood to Briarbrook, where they did a landscaping job at, I believe they did a job at 80 Briarbrook that appeared to be edging of beds and mulch. And you can see the tractors in front of 80 Briarbrook Street. And then they did a landscaping job. It appears that they planted shrubberies at 90 Briarbrook Street. And these are the pictures of, there's a big pile of mulch where they put mulch in at Briarbrook Street. And so these are landscaping activities, and Thayer continues to use 270 Hillside Street as a staging area for their landscaping business. So again, these pictures were taken on August 11th. The last series of pictures were taken on October 4th. This was a Saturday, and it's kind of blurry. I happened to be going down Forest Street, and in front of me, a dump truck pulled out of 270 Hillside Street, the Forest Street entrance. You can see it coming out of the entrance. And the dump truck is filled with kiln-dried firewood. I followed the truck down the street. When they got to Hillside Street, it took a left. And if you see the last two pictures, October 4th was a Saturday. It was a rainy day. They had a tarp over the dump truck to cover the wood. But I think you can make out, just on top of the sign, the wood in the dump truck. On that day, I witnessed from my backyard, I can go to my back fence and see them drive trucks into the wood warehouse, and I can hear them load these trucks with the front-end loaders. It makes quite a racket when you have a front-end loader full of firewood and you dump it into a dump truck. And so I can hear this happening, and then I see the dump truck leave the warehouse and leave the property. This leads me to believe that they continue to operate their firewood distribution business from the property, which this board ordered a cease and desist of that activity in February of 2013. You know, we're not here to, I'm not here to discuss the merits of your decisions. I think those decisions are final. It's gone to Norfolk Superior Court, and the judge agreed with this board on a few occasions, one being when the Oldfields filed for a preliminary injunction on the first order, cease and desist order by this board in September of 2013, and Norfolk Superior Court judge, I'm not sure.
Judge Wilson.
Judge Wilson denied that request, saying, you know, that they would, the basis was they were unlikely to win in an appeal of your decision at that point in time. The firewood decision this board made in February was also appealed, and that appeal was thrown out of Norfolk Superior Court. In June of 2014, the town of Milton took their nursery in front of Norfolk Superior Court requesting a cease and desist order, which Judge, what's his name? He was Wilson, right?
We're sorry.
Judge Wilson issued the cease and desist. So just based on our observations and our pictures, we do not believe that Thayer is complying. We don't agree with the building commissioner's assessment, and we don't believe that Thayer is complying with your orders nor the order of Norfolk Superior Court.
I'd like to make some additional comments. This has turned into a tremendous circus.
Just for the record, you're Mr. Johanning, is that correct?
Johanning, yes.
Okay.
I'm Phil Johanning. I live at 23 Parkwood Drive. All these hearings have turned into a tremendous circus with supporters of Thayer Nursery coming and speaking about all types of things. But what I want to make clear is our action has to do with the enforcement of the 1938 zoning bylaws. These bylaws have been in effect for 76 years. This is about fair enforcement of the zoning bylaws. John and I had nothing to do with the enacting of the bylaws. We didn't write them, but we're asking for fair enforcement. Certain bylaws having to do with nursery and landscaping businesses have been further explained by the decision of Judge Sands in June Leiden versus Town of Milton Board of Appeals and Thomas Coulter. I believe that what Judge Sands has done is gone into many of the issues that we've talked about with Mr. DeLuna, having to do with the evolution of the business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One final point I'd like to make is the law does not recognize the number of years that someone has lived in Milton as a reason for preference. I hear a lot of people saying, oh, they've been here forever. Yeah, that's true, and I agree with that. But that is not a reason for preference. What I'd like to do is walk through quickly some of the points that Judge Sands made in land court in the Coulter case, just so that we can make perfectly clear, you know, some of the provisions of the bylaws. The first thing I'd like to talk about is on page 15 of Judge Sands' decision, just a little below the middle of the page in the new paragraph. Bylaws do not define the term nursery, but a dictionary definition of a nursery is an area where plants are grown for transplanting for use as stocks, for budding and grafting, or for sale. Now, what he's saying is they're grown. What Thayer Nursery is primarily is a staging area. Plants come in on 18-wheel trucks, and they go out on dump trucks. You know, very few plants are grown. The facility is frequently called a farm, but it's not a farm. It's basically 4 acres with 2 residences on the acres, on the 2 acres, on the 4 acres. So basically, there's a large parking lot and a staging area for the business. Another point that Judge Sands made on page 12 is under General Law 40A, Section 9, bylaws or ordinances shall provide for specific types of uses which shall only be permitted in specific districts upon the issuance of a special permit, so long as such uses are in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the bylaw or ordinance. If you read the special permits that have been issued to Thayer Nursery, it's always with the idea that the residential character of the neighborhood will be preserved and protected. And you know, when I called Anne Marie Fagan to ask why Joe Prondak wasn't enforcing the cease and desist order, she said to me, I don't know how many trucks a nursery needs to operate. It's not about that. And the concern that has been discussed here in the prior hearings about the health of the business, the welfare of the business, et cetera, is not the primary concern. Section 40A of Mass General Law says that the primary concern has to be the residential character of the neighborhood. How many dump trucks preserve the residential character of the Scotts Woods neighborhood? 0. That's my contention. On the bottom of page 16, Judge Sands says, we now come to the central issue in this case to determine the validity of the landscaping business on locus. The bylaws do not define the term landscaping business. A landscaping business provides landscaping services such as lawn care and maintenance, grading, sodding, tree work, landscape design, snow removal on other properties, and would also sell plants, loam, mulch, firewood grown on or off the premises. A landscaping business would need to store on its premises the vehicles and equipment needed to perform its services, such as pickup trucks, dump trucks, trailers, snow plowing equipment, as well as materials for its services, including mulch, loam, gravel, and sand. The bylaws, the Milton bylaws, authorize neither as a use as of right nor by special permit. The board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, could never authorize these uses at Thayer Nursery by special permit. And what Judge Sands said was that they would have to have a variance to operate these types of businesses. Number four, or my point number four, on the bottom of page 17, is the most interesting, I think, because what it talks about is what the Milton bylaws allow in terms of vehicles on a property. And if Joe Prondak doesn't have a copy of this decision, I'd be happy to give him my copy, because Judge Sand says that conditions 3 and 12 of special permit 4 allow Coulter to garage on Locust up to 2 pickup trucks, 5 dump trucks, 6 14-foot trailers, none of which are automobiles, in the district. The garaging or maintaining on any lot of more than 5 vehicles when accessory to a dwelling may be authorized by special permit. So if you have more than 5 vehicles, you have to have a special permit, and it has to be accessory to the dwelling. Not accessory to the business, but accessory to the dwelling. So then he goes on to say, bylaws section 3A7C. Additionally, the garaging or maintaining on any lot of more than 5 vehicles at any time is not an accessory use unless a special permit is granted. Bylaw section 3B1A. The maintaining on any lot of any commercial vehicle is not an accessory use, except that one such commercial vehicle may be maintained, provided that such commercial vehicle is garaged. You can see that there were at least 5 dump trucks, front-end loaders, bobcats, trailers, pickup trucks on the property, and it clearly says here that you can only have one and it must be garaged. The bylaws do not define the term automobile, commercial automobile or commercial vehicle, but a dictionary definition of an automobile is usually a 4-wheeled automotive vehicle designed for passenger transportation. So what they're saying is, if it's an accessory use to a dwelling, we're talking about passenger vehicles. None of these are passenger vehicles. Josh keeps passenger vehicles. His sister keeps passenger vehicles, but these are in addition to all of these other vehicles. And I know of no special permit that has been issued to allow for more than 5 vehicles. And then, in addition to that, I would contend that the majority of these vehicles are commercial vehicles. The bylaws, to wrap up, the vehicles specified in conditions 3 and 12 would be considered commercial vehicles, and there appears to be neither any previous special permit or variance, nor any provision in the bylaws allowing for their use on Locust as of right or by special permit. At most, it appears that the bylaws would allow 1 commercial vehicle to be garaged on Locust. Clearly, when you look at the situation in John's photos, you can see that there are many, many vehicles, none of which are automobiles. There is no special permit allowing for those to be there, and the bylaws do not permit more than 1 commercial vehicle on a site of less than 5 acres. One last item I'd like to talk about. At the bottom of page 18, it talks about signage, and it says that that signs are not allowed in a residential area. A permanent sign is not permitted there. And so, to wrap it up, we're just, again, talking about the law. And we're talking about enforcement of the law. And I think in the case of Joe Prondak, perhaps knowledge of the law.
And if I could just add, I think that that was the spirit of this board's decisions in September of 2013 and February of 2014, as well as the judges who have heard this case in various forms since then in Norfolk Superior Court.
One last thing I'd like to say is that I have visited the Thayer has said that they were looking for other places to keep their vehicles related to the landscaping business. Now, I've already talked about how many vehicles would be permitted on the site, but I did check with the town of Canton and with the town of Stoughton, where they apparently were either leasing land or looking for land, and I have found that none of their vehicles were ever registered in the town of Stoughton nor in the town of Canton. So what does that mean? The law in the Commonwealth says that if you're going to garage a vehicle in a location, it must be registered in that town. None of these vehicles were ever registered in Stoughton or Canton, which leads me to believe that they were never garaged there or stored there. And that's all we have to say.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask you one question? Have you guys gone back to the Superior Court?
There are so many things going on in Superior Court. I guess I would say yes.
I mean, have you gone back to say to Paul Wilson, these guys are ignoring your order and you want to do something?
No, that's the town of Milton did that, and we went there, and Judge Wilson would not allow us to, I don't know what the term is, but to join in on this. He said we can pursue it on our own. And so what we don't understand is what we see and what we photographed here to us does not look like that anybody is doing what this board ordered them to do and what Judge Wilson ordered them to do, and the town has just been complicit. And that's why we're here. I mean, if you look at Mr. Prondak's letter, I just don't see how he could come to that conclusion, especially since it appears that he hasn't even visited the property since June 24th that he said in his letter?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So you haven't sought your own injunctive relief in the Norfolk Superior Court? It was the town that did it? I'm just curious as to, okay.
Yeah, you'd have to talk to Matt about that.
We're asking you for help. We're asking you to find that the building inspector has not enforced your ruling.
Okay, I understand what you're asking us to do. We obviously don't have the powers that the Superior Court judge has, though. That's the only reason for my question. And we can't hold people in contempt.
No, we understand that.
Okay.
We understand that.
But one of the things that has happened is that Judge Wilson may have signed the order, but Judge Broussard issued the opinion. And Judge Broussard gave the town an injunction. The town has the power to enforce this. The town is not doing that.
Okay, why don't I hear from Mr. Prondak? Or why don't we hear from Mr. Prondak, sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, Joe Brondak, Building Commissioner. Couple of things. So the board issues its initial determination on this project back in September of 2013. And there have been various appeals as to various aspects of that business that have come in front of this board and gone to court. And at one point, based on complaints from Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe, the town, basically myself and Councilor Warren Galvin, went to Norfolk Superior Court and obtained an injunction against the nursery for running the commercial landscape business. We obtained that injunction through the work that we did, the investigation that we did, and the presentation that was made at Norfolk Superior Court, all in the spirit of enforcing the board's order. It is my understanding from the board's order that the Blair Nursery is allowed to run a nursery business. They've been allowed to do that since 1967. There is, in one of those special permits along the way, there is an actual condition that allows for 5 trucks. In the most recent proceedings in front of this board, there was no directive that rescinded
that order for 5 trucks, nor was there any clarification or determination from the board as to how many trucks they could have or should have to run a nursery. Sorry. I was at the hearing at Norfolk Superior Court, which resulted in the injunction, and attorneys for the town, attorneys for the Thayer Nursery, and attorney for Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe were present. And in the very beginning, Judge Wilson asked each of those attorneys if there was some degree of a farm operation, and would they stipulate to that? And all 3 attorneys at that time said yes. He didn't get into a discussion of exactly what degree of farm operation is allowed there or is permitted under the Dover Amendment, but all 3 parties agreed in front of the judge that that was in fact true. And essentially, after the deliberation and the consideration by the judge, they did in fact issue, the court did in fact issue an injunction. Sometime after the injunction was issued, we received a number of complaints from Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe, and even Ms. Lepore at some points. And I did do investigations. I continue to, in my letter, I spell out some specific times that I was there and some specific inspections that I made, but I am on Hillside Street quite often. And sometimes it's a matter of just driving by because I'm going to another inspection. Sometimes it's because I just want to keep an eye on Thayer Nursery, and it is what I do. What in many of the complaints that we received from Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe, the gist of the complaint was, it is a 2-acre nursery. They don't need this equipment. It is not within my power to make that determination. I can't, but being reasonable, I can't imagine. I mean, I see the size of the trees that they nurse on the nursery site. I see that there is no restriction from the nursery delivering trees to a particular site. I can't imagine that you can deliver some of those trees or a large order of trees and shrubs with a small pickup truck. So it takes dump trucks, it takes trailers, it takes bobcats to do that. Without specific conditions from this board relative to those specific items, which appear to be creating the offensive noise, I think really is what a lot of this comes down to, is the noise. I can't make the assumption, and I can't go back to a judge and say, Judge, it's a 2-acre nursery, of course they don't need this equipment. I have to go back to a judge and say, Judge, here is the evidence that this particular truck is operating the landscape business, and it has to be specific in order to win, in order to find them in contempt. And essentially, I think that's what Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe were looking for the town to do, was to bring this back in front of the judge and get them found in contempt. And I have investigated it. I have continued to investigate it. Some of the specifics of the investigation are in my letter. I am quite convinced that, based on my inspections down first in Stoughton and then in Canton, there were nights that I went down, well, there was one night in particular when I went down there, and as I've said in my letter, there essentially are 2 dump trucks that were regularly parked down in Stoughton. I went there one night, it was about 6 o'clock, maybe between 6 and 7, and there was only one dump truck there. And then as I was driving back north on 138, the second dump truck was heading south on 138 towards that site. I can't imagine at 7 o'clock at night they were going to do a landscape job. They were going to park the truck that was out doing landscaping. So along with that, and I made note of the numbers of the trucks that parked down at that site, and I have seen those trucks throughout town, and I'm sure they do landscaping in other towns as well, but I've seen those trucks throughout town. doing landscaping jobs, so I will stop and I will look at the numbers of the trucks and see if those trucks that are doing the landscaping are the same trucks that are parking down at the Stoughton, or the Canton site. And I have not found, in those several sightings that I've had throughout the course of the summer, I have not found the trucks that I've seen routinely parked at the nursery. I have not seen those trucks doing landscaping jobs. I've only seen those trucks doing nursery. So, as my letter states, at this time, we have found that there is no violation and they seem to be in compliance. I'm not saying that Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe are wrong. I'm just saying that we have not yet come across the evidence as a town to bring this back to court to find the nursery in contempt. And that's the gist of my position.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Mr. Prondak, do you think that Judge Sand's decision relating to the Milton zoning bylaws has anything to do with you?
No.
You are responsible for enforcing the zoning bylaws of the town. Judge Sand says that the zoning bylaws permit only one commercial vehicle on a lot of less than 5 acres.
Judge Sands would have to look at this case in particular, in my opinion, and rule on this case in particular.
He looked at the Coulter case, which is very similar.
Okay, I think, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Joe, when was the last time you went to Canton, and when was the last time you went to Stoughton?
The last time I went to Canton is the last date that's on here.
Okay, that was in July, it's
Right,
October
but-
15th.
But during the course of the summer, the
Pam Lepori
inspections.
filed
the
complaints, we filed complaints, other neighbors have filed
Inspections that I've done over
complaints.
the course of the summer.
And the letter.
Let's not talk over each other,
Sorry.
okay?
All right,
Just finish what you have to say, and then you can
he
respond.
wrote the letter in response to our complaint, saying that he found them in compliance. And he also copied Maggie Oldfield on the letter, telling her that they are in compliance. Did Maggie file a complaint? We filed the complaint. So I'm not sure why Maggie was copied, but she was. And I think since that point in time, then everything has moved from wherever it was. He saw some things in Canton, and he outlined what he saw in the letter. All of that equipment is now as far as I know, all of that equipment is at 270 Hillside Street.
I'd like to hear, I can't speak to the rest of you, I'd like to hear from the Oldfields. I'd like them to take these pictures and tell me their response, tell me what I'm looking at.
Again,
Please.
you want to go through it? I mean, I spoke to him quickly about some of this stuff.
Okay.
But why don't we go through the pictures?
Are you gonna do it instead of them?
I prefer, but if you have questions, then, I mean, you know. Would you prefer, I mean, again, I've went through, but.
Oh, go ahead. If I have questions,
Again,
I'll
this
ask
is
them.
part of the mulch.
Sorry, you are?
Excuse me, I'm John Kozlowski. I represent the respondents, the Thayer Nursery.
Go ahead.
And this is, again, the loom, right now, trust me, they're trying to comply with this core cease and disorder. They've set up another facility in Canton. They have all their landscaping equipment, everything, the loom, everything, deliveries are being made there. But in connection with the nursery, they also utilize these products, these trucks, these equipment. So what you see here in this picture, this loom, this is a delivery that's utilized in connection with the nursery.
What does that mean exactly?
Again, they have fields out there, they groom the area.
So this is loom, this is mulch.
This is what's used.
It's
yeah.
being spread on the nursery
It's being
site.
spread on the nursery. They
And these three trucks, let's just take these three trucks that I see in the first picture, are they used exclusively in the nursery operation, and if so, for what?
Well, not, for the most part, not for the most part, there's two crews with regard to the landscaping, all right? So they use two trucks. But if for some reason they need another truck, what they might do is swap out You know what I mean? So every day you usually have 2 crews of landscapers going out.
And those crews are going out from Canton?
Correct. But at the same time, I don't want to mislead you, if, let's say there's a job that's for landscaping that's a half a day, what they'll do is they'll take those laborers and and basically loan them over to the nursery because, I mean, the nursery constantly has things that need to be done by these laborers. So what they're doing is, although they may have in common laborers, as pointed out by Mr. Prondak, they have bobcats and stuff utilized with regard to the landscaping business at the Canton location. He viewed it. They also have a bobcat in connection with what they utilize at the nursery. Equipment like that, let's say they were getting a big load of trees in, or something like that, and instead of going out and renting a bobcat from a rental agency, they may borrow the bobcat from the landscaping business to utilize in connection with the nursery business. So what's happening here is that they're sharing labor, they may share equipment, but other than that, the 2 portions of the business are separated. They have the landscaping business, which is being out of Canton, and they have the nursery business. So there is some overlap, but the landscaping business is not being run out of the Milton property. The Oldfields are trying extremely hard to comply with this cease and desist order.
Just to go back to this first, so some of these 3 trucks that I'm looking at here, are some of those trucks?
Are those
The one on the far right is broken down.
But
is that a nursery truck?
Yeah, the one with the caution tape on it.
Yeah, all right.
Yellow tape.
So are any of these trucks ever used in connection with
Yeah.
the landscaping business?
Yeah. We rotate the trucks from side to side, based on what the scope of the work is and the needs for the deliveries are.
Can I just point out, there are 5 trucks in the pictures.
Just looking at one,
Okay,
we're talking
sure.
about one picture.
Sure.
All right, take me to a 5-truck picture.
You have to put them together, and you have to use points of reference to figure out which truck is which. You can use the excavator in one picture, you can use the pile of mulch in another picture. If you look at the truck starting on the left, the first picture, and you move your way over, you can count 5 trucks.
Are there 5 trucks on the
Can we
property?
just stipulate whether there are 5 trucks there or not on this particular time?
I don't want to have to go through these pictures. Are there 5 trucks?
Honest to God.
No.
Okay.
Well, again.
You'll note the date and the time?
No.
Again.
And on that particular day, we were doing a project at the nursery to become compliant with our permit. We were doing a big drainage project at our facility to work towards and what we need to do from a permitting perspective.
At the same time, they're working with the town and they're seeking a special permit. And to comply with the building department, there's certain things that are being requested to be done that are big projects on the job. Typically, an example of that is typically if you know, the landscapers aren't going out, what they'll do is they'll utilize the work for us to try to comply with the request of the town to come in compliance so they can proceed with trying to get a special permit.
If I'm not wrong, this was a Sunday?
Just to go back to my point though, some of the trucks that are stored on the site are used in the landscaping operation.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
At times, yes. They're not 100%, as we stated, throughout the whole year.
Why is that not a violation of the
No,
the
because
court's
they're
order?
not-
Wait, let me, again, because they're not being stored there, all right? They're operating out of the Canton project. They may be on the property at different intervals, depending on what's going on. They're not being stored there, they're not operating out of there, but if there's a big thing, that there's something, if there's, again, they're digging a trench for drainage purposes as part of the process, that's a big job. They have the whole crew over there trying to do that project. There's other aspects of it. There's,
for instance, we have our composting composting pile down the street. So what we have to do is bring up our compost to backfill the trench or to use in our fields.
Can I just make a point?
If I
that
were
the-
to go out to the site right now, how many trucks are there?
At the nursery?
Day nursery, how many trucks are there?
Two.
2 or 3.
And you need 3 trucks to do the nursery business?
One's broken down.
One's broken.
Yeah, but when it's fixed, you're only gonna have 2 there?
That's what landscaping vehicle.
So the landscaping vehicle is the one that's broken down, and the 2 that are there, parked there tonight, are used exclusively for the nursery business?
Yeah, but what
Never-
happened?
Never for the, it's a simple question.
No,
Ne-
not at all.
Well, then, how are they not involved in the landscaping business then? If they're there tonight, parked overnight, how are they not involved in the landscaping business?
I don't think there's a distinction between the nursery going out and renting from U-Haul a truck and bringing it there and using it in the operation of the nursery, than borrowing a truck from the landscaping business to use it in conjunction with the nursery. That is being utilized in conjunction with the nursery business, so it's not a violation of the order. Now, if these trucks are, as I understand it, probably the biggest complaint in this whole thing is the loam, the mulch, the construction debris with regard to the landscaping projects. That's all been moved off-site. Even the loom for the, other contractors come, other builders come, other landscapers come, looking to buy in conjunction with their purchasing of stock from the nursery, loom, mulch. They send them to the Canton property to purchase it, although it may be incidental to the nursery business. They don't want to even go down that road. That's all sent over to the Canton property. However, in conjunction, and here's a,
These are sites from Canton.
this is the Canton property right here. These are the,
It's a bobcat, it's a piles of mulch.
So-
Here's the trucks, green wagon, cement mixer, van.
And some equipment stays on job sites.
Right, let's just go back to tonight.
no,
Let's take one of the landscaping trucks
Mhm.
that's parked at the Thayer Nursery tonight. So tomorrow morning is a job for that truck to do, a landscaping
no,
job.
no. What happened in that case was the truck broke down, so they took a nursery truck and now they're using a nursery truck in conjunction with the landscaping. So it's more of a sharing of assets as opposed to running the business.
So, okay, this sounds a little bit like a Ponzi game to me, but it's a really simple question. Are any of the landscaping trucks used in the landscaping business parked at their nursery tonight?
No.
Are they ever parked at their nursery overnight?
Yes. If we have,
So for example, the pictures that we were shown of a truck leaving their nursery, going down the road, arguably with firewood in it, does that happen?
Well, again,
Okay. If that happens, how are you not in contempt of the court's order, and how are you not in
Because-
violation of this board's orders?
but because again, they're not operating again, if one of the trucks in conjunction with the landscaping business goes on the property, that's not a violation of the court order. The landscaping business, like any other landscaping business, like any other builder, any other homeowner, consumer, they can go there and purchase and acquire the products or the trees, incidental things associated with the nursery and take it to a job. Again, and I point out, Josh Oldfield, who runs, again, I haven't spoken to him about that picture of going down the street. He lives in a property adjacent to the nursery. So, again, it's my understanding that's not firewood in the truck, all right? I mean, it's the middle of the summer, August, September.
So what is it?
It's October 4th. It was October 4th.
Again, I don't know what it is.
say is what we have are receipts from our suppliers saying where our firewood is being delivered, the dates it's being delivered. There's our firewood going to 495 Turnpike Street. Here it is, our invoice, June 16th for loam going to 495 Turnpike Street. July 3rd, loam, 495 Turnpike Street. 8/31, 495 Turnpike Street. 9/15, 495 Turnpike Street. 9/22, 495 Turnpike Street. 6/13, our mulch. Where's it going? 495 Turnpike Street. 7/31, another load of mulch. Where's it going? Canton. 9/1, here's our check for our rent for Turnpike Street. October 1st, there's our rent check for Turnpike Street. 5/15, here's our rent for Stoughton. 4/19, there's our rent for Stoughton.
If I could just ask a question, are any of these vehicles, if the vehicle is garaged in Canton or garaged in Stoughton, is there a requirement in the Commonwealth for it to be registered in that city? Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Again,
Stay away from that.
But that's not really, that's
Again,
not an issue for
stay
us
away from that, yeah.
to decide. What I want to know is this. This is really an impossible task for us tonight to do this. Because this evidence that's before us is ambiguous at best. But what I want to have a clear answer to this question. For every landscaping job that Thayer Nursery undertakes to perform for anyone, does the truck originate in Canton or Stoughton, come to Thayer Nursery in Milton, pick up the stuff, and leave and go away and do the job?
Yes.
No,
Wait, I'm sorry,
no,
what?
it does not. It goes from Canton. Our drivers come up from Rhode Island. They drive straight to Canton. They pick up the truck, they pick up their mulch, they pick up their tools, and they go to the job site. If we then need product on our landscape jobs, then I have a nursery guy deliver some product to the job site. If on occasion we need a truck, if we have a really big tree and we need a truck and a trailer, then we will have to shift trucks and trailers around to have that come back to the nursery. We have gone through great pains to try and separate it. And this was our issue all of last year. We talked about how challenging it was going to be for Joe Prondak in this town to enforce, because we are so intertwined. We've been intertwined for 50 years. And to all of a sudden expect that we're going to go and not be intertwined, buy new vehicles, buy new equipment, is insane.
Can I point something else out too? If there's another landscaper, if there's another builder out there that wants the same stock, the same thing, they do the same thing to deliver it to them. That's part of the nursery business, whether it's going to the landscaping portion of the job, or if it's going to another project somewhere else that's not, has nothing to do with the nursery, Thayer Nursery landscaping. That's how, in other words, that's the sharing of the assets that they utilize. And if they can do that to deliver it to ABC Landscaping Company, that, again, my reading of the cease and desist order is that they can do it because that's part of their nursery business to the landscaping portion of the business. And again, I think they've gone over with removing any, other than what's actually utilized in connection with their own fields, the loam and the mulch. And when they have people coming in looking to purchase that, because in there, you know, they send them over to the Canton. That's all delivered over there.
Could I show something? Remember, we had a ruling saying that no construction material could be at the nursery. This is Josh Oldfield's house. These are cement blocks. These are pieces of slate. These are piles of stone. This is August the 17th, 2014. Now,
Which was a Sunday.
I understand. I realize that it may be difficult, but these things were strictly prohibited. And it was agreed by the Oldfields that this type of material would not be maintained at the nursery. And I challenge anyone to tell me what these cement blocks have to do with a nursery business. So what I'd like to say is that we have been waiting for a very long time for compliance. The original order was issued in September of 2013, and this is August the 17th of 2014. And so I find that there's absolutely no way you can say that anyone is struggling to comply or that they're in compliance when this construction material existed at the site on August the 17th, 2014.
Probably still there.
If I may add on that one, I have seen that stuff. It was part of what I saw in the inspection, as explained to me by Ms. Oldfield, that it is not there for sale. They're not selling that stuff. They're using it to create the paths and various displays that they use to sell their nursery product. And I mean, I don't see any trucks going out of, say, a nursery loaded with, trucks or cars, going out of, say, a nursery loaded with masonry stuff. And you're right, the stuff that was there in August is probably still there today because they're not selling it.
Judge Sands doesn't say that you have to sell it. He says you can't have it.
You can't store it there.
Again, we're not
It's part of the landscaping
We're not
business.
hearing Judge Sands' decision.
I agree, we're not hearing Judge Sands' decision.
I mean, if you look at these two, the first question in my mind is how could these be utilized in a residential property? What they utilize is with regard to the nursery and the displays. I mean, there's no tables, there's no application whatsoever for these things for, I can't imagine, for a residential property.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions?
Maybe you just answered this question, but so the picture with the stone blocks and the dust, this stuff here, is anything in that picture used in the commercial landscaping business?
No. So if you've been up to the nursery, you'll see that we are in the process of digging a drainage trench, and we are in the process of flip-flopping our nursery around. So previously, we have a 65-foot existing buffer between us and their property. And previously, we had our mulch piles there, we had our stone piles there, and right now, we are in the process of flip-flopping the two quadrants around. So that quadrant that was closest to their house is now a field. So what we had to do was we had to go in and dig up almost an acre of stone driveway. We dug it up, we then had to stockpile the stone on this quadrant over here.
Yep.
Then we had to bring in compost to fill in that new field, the new grow-out area we just created. And down the street at 217 Hillside Street is where we have our Mass Department of Agricultural Resources composting permit. So then we need to bring our trucks down the street, we load up with the compost, we then bring it back and we're creating a field.
Okay.
This project has been going on all summer.
Fine, so nothing in there is commercial,
No.
commercial use. Is that pile of mulch in that picture for commercial use or for residential use? Or excuse me, or use for the nursery business on the site?
It's used on site. We
Okay.
mulch in our plants. We have 5.3 acres on the original site.
Yep.
We then have 3.68 acres across the street, and so we use it on both
Okay.
areas.
That's what I want to know.
Virginia?
How long does it take to use a pile of mulch?
We keep it on site when we get new plant material in, and then, as you know, this summer, August and September, we're in a severe drought, so we are always mulching our plant material in to keep them moist. So we got that pile in, I don't know, maybe July or August, and it's currently gone. So we use it as needed when we bring in our plant material. So it's kind of hard to say.
The thought that I'm having is that maybe too much of it comes in at any one time. Maybe bringing it in as needed would be helpful for the situation and make your neighbors like you better.
we do bring it in as needed.
A little more.
And we were told that we could bring it in for our own property. There were 4 houses that we own in the neighborhood. And that
I make everybody happy. I'm not suggesting that we can fix all of that right here, but somebody's going to make a decision and somebody's going to be upset. But these are the kinds of things that you have to think about. You have to.
And I totally agree with you, and that's why we actually moved it over here.
And then you're going to have another,
Right.
neighbor that's unhappy with you too. So you have to understand,
Right.
it might be that that amount is the wrong amount to have on your property right now. It might be that you're growing out of what you've got. And it might be that we need to put more conditions on, because there are certain conditions that were not put in there at the original, or not the original, but the most recent. And we always do put in that we can put in other conditions from time to time as the need arises. Sounds like the need is arisen.
Right, and as long as we do need a permit from the zoning board to do that, I totally understand. But because we have over 2 acres, the Mass General Law is 2 acres or more.
I understand
you
that.
constitute a farm, and boards cannot unnecessarily or overburden and regulate a farm. So there
We've been
is-
through that.
Unnecessarily.
Yes.
We've been through all of that.
We have
We've been
been,
through all that.
correct.
But I'm suggesting
Correct.
that now it is necessary. It might not have been before, it might have been before, and we didn't do it, but it is now.
I think it goes both ways, though.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Understanding that, you know, I mean,
Yes, it does.
they're next to the nursery, they're next to the farm, there's gonna be mulch, there's gonna be room. I mean, that's part of the process, that's needed for the operation of
But it
the
also means
business.
that you're gonna have people complaining about it.
I agree, but at the same time,
Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And this is
I-
not why we're here tonight.
No, I know, I know,
But this is
no.
this is behind it all.
understand exactly
It
what you
really
mean,
is.
yeah.
And you're exactly right, and that's why we are going through our whole special permitting process. And we do have a meeting coming up with the planning board, and they will be, as you know, town meeting passed the zoning change.
I understand
And
that,
so
but in the
we-
meantime, we do have some people that are seriously hurt in all of this.
And-
They
and-
seriously can't use part of their
And
property
that's why we
because of
moved
this.
it all the way. They
I
are
agree.
about 3 acres away from this site, and that's why we totally sympathize and we understand it. And that's why we've flip-flopped the quadrants. And on this, as a buffer between their house is on the other side of this barn. So they cannot see these trucks from their house, and they cannot see this because they're on the other side of the barn. So we are really doing our very best
I think they're trying to work with the
to
building
address
department to
their
address their
concerns.
concerns, whether or not they can do it or not.
Right.
I'm appreciating that, and yet we're still here. That's all I'm saying. And we are not going to be addressing that, because but I'm suggesting, just, you have
So,
to.
understood.
Right. And through the permitting process, we will be installing some fencing.
That's,
But that's not before us then.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other evidence anybody wants to present? Anybody here in the audience that wants to speak or present any evidence that relates to this really limited proceeding before us tonight, which is to effectively overturn the building inspector's decision not to take any further action pursuant to the 2 previously issued decisions of the Zoning Board of Appeals? I mean, that's really what we're here to consider tonight. Anyone here that want to add anything to the mix on this?
I would like to ask a question if I could, because tonight was the first time I heard of a newer firewood incident, and could we clarify that? while we- I think in the beginning of Phil and John's
On October
presentation, talked
4th,
about
on
a-
October 4th, which is a Saturday, I witnessed trucks going into the warehouse. I heard them being loaded with firewood. I witnessed dump trucks leaving that warehouse loaded with firewood, and I have a picture of a dump truck leaving the property, going down Hillside Street towards Route 138, loaded with firewood. So I've seen it. I'm not lying. And I hear it.
I wanted to ask.
We understood from the ruling of the zoning board of appeals in February that the amount of firewood that could be stored on the nursery could only be that sufficient to service a cash and carry business.
Loaded by hand into
That's
your
exactly
car.
right.
Correct.
Right, so that's why I'm asking the question.
Not delivered by dump
Why
truck.
would Mr. Rowe have seen a truck loaded with firewood or heard a truck being loaded
So
with
what we
firewood?
have to do now is our firewood gets delivered to Canton, as you can see on the delivery tickets. And then what we have to do is bring in small truckloads to the barn for those people to cash and carry.
I saw them leaving the barn full of wood.
Correct. So then what happens is this one particular time, we needed some more wood out in Canton, so then we had to bring it back to Canton, and that's why you saw it going towards 138.
I hear it all weekend long, one particular
Wow.
time.
Yeah,
Again,
But I don't know really what was in that, I
I
don't.
would disagree with you, because
Yeah.
we're the one doing it. I mean, it's outrageous, it's not happening.
Well,
It's stored in Canton.
again, they have,
Makes no sense.
Why was it
Well,
needed
the
in
ones going-
Canton? Why was it needed in Canton on October 4th?
I'm not sure, I don't have.
But logistically, if the wood is in Canton, it makes no sense from a business perspective. The wood's in Canton, to come to Milton, to load up, to go back to a delivery, it's
Well,
not
that's
real.
that's why I'm asking. You said
I
that.
don't know why, I don't know why it was.
It could have came, we've been running short, it could have came from Eagle Farm, and then we backed into the wood barn. We have a good relationship with Eagle Farm. So oftentimes you'll see our truck running down Hillside Street with loads of wood on it.
I can see the barn from my property line.
But just
And I
think
saw
about
it go in
It-
empty and
it
come
makes
out
no
full,
sense.
twice.
You're right, it makes no sense. That's why I'm asking, why was it going back to Canton? Because it doesn't make sense, and I'm trying to understand
It's
it.
an
Why
insult
was
to
this
even
happening?
listen to this guy.
Don't go there.
again, they have many photographs in here. They don't have any photographs of them loading it up in the barn.
But I'm hearing Maggie say that that truck went to Canton on October 4th
No,
because they needed it
I
there.
don't know the date. I said I don't know the date, this is not date stamped, that's how I started this conversation. It's going back to Canton, so I don't know if wood is in it. I can't see any wood in this truck. I don't know what's in this truck.
Okay.
I mean,
We have to wrap
is it,
this
I
up.
mean, is it October 4th? We can try to find out what the story is with that. And again, to me, I mean, this looks like to me that he took pictures when he was in his car to suggest that he was in the house, he observed loading of trucks of firewood.
Well, we can ask
I
him.
did. And here's what happened.
And he didn't take any
I
photographs.
saw that. I can hear it from my house. I'm loading the trucks. And the diesel exhaust permeates the whole neighborhood. This is Saturday. It's a rainy day. If you look at the weather, it was raining on October 4th. I was coming down Forest Street going towards Hillside Street, and I saw the truck come out. I took those pictures with my iPhone. They're crummy pictures. When the truck stopped at the corner of Forest and Hillside Street to take a left, truck turned left, I could see the wood in the truck. It's covered with a tarp, but some of the wood was exposed. So after that, I went home and I went to my back fence, and I can hear them loading up the dump trucks. It's quite noisy when you take a front-end loader and you take wood and you dump it into the bed of a dump truck. I can hear that loud and clear from my house. I went over to the fence and I watched a truck go in, get loaded up, I can hear it, and leave, and a second truck did the same thing. So, this is what I can see from my house.
Does that ever happen? Forget the date, forget whether it was October 4th or September 17th. Does that happen?
No.
Ever? It never happens. You never load wood on the site to be brought somewhere else.
We're too new into our season to say it will never happen.
It hasn't happened. I'm
It
asking.
can't happen, when it's not
happen.
allowed to
Right,
happen.
Right.
It does not happen.
And
We
as
store
he
the
said,
wood
it's a
in
rainy
Canton.
day. Our wood is all 100% kiln-dried firewood. We don't deliver our wood in the rain. So I find it very odd that we would be delivering our kiln-dried firewood to dump it at someone's house in the rain. We pay a premium price to get extra dry wood.
But the testimony before us tonight is, it has never happened.
Correct.
But that isn't what I heard from the testimony. I heard that it was dropped there, and then it was taken to Canton, and it's all over the place. It's kiln-dried firewood, but on a rainy day, they were driving it to Canton. And in Canton, there is absolutely no protection.
How do we
from the
know
rain.
there's, I'm sorry, how do we know that there's firewood in that truck? I can't tell from the picture that there's firewood. Your testimony was
Yes, my
that you
testimony
heard
there-
stuff
No,
land in the
that I saw
truck.
that firewood.
You
My
saw
testimony-
firewood in
yes.
that truck.
If you
I
look-
could actually see
If you
it.
look above the sign.
I can't,
Okay,
honestly,
well,
I can't tell.
I'm just telling you
all
what
right?
I saw.
All
I'll
right,
keep
I
my
want to, no, I want to hear.
in the car
what-
from now on.
Hang on one second.
It's not too
What I
difficult
thought
to-
you had said is that you heard firewood hit the truck. And my point was going to be that it could have been fire truck, it could have been anything that was loaded in
I
there.
saw that first, then I went home. I was driving down Forest Street. I just happened to come across this.
Okay.
And then, from there, I went to my home on Parkwood Drive, and I can hear them loading throughout the day, Saturday, firewood into dump trucks. I went to the back fence and I witnessed the dump trucks leave the warehouse. I can see the warehouse from my property line.
Okay.
You can see the dump trucks go in, and you can see them come out, and I can hear them being loaded.
And you saw wood in the fire,
Yes.
firewood, kiln-dried
Yes.
firewood in the truck?
In the truck, yes.
Okay.
What I heard him testify to was that in that truck, you saw wood, you know?
Well, that's what I'm
And
asking.
I also
now.
saw wood in the trucks leave the warehouse. So, I don't know what you hear, I'm telling you what my testimony is.
Again,
But we heard Maggie say directly that the wood was taken out of the barn and driven to Canton. And she said they would never deliver it on a rainy day because it would get all wet. But there's no shelter in Canton.
We don't know what they have in Canton.
There's no shelter in
I'm assuming they have a
Canton.
warehouse in Canton.
Well, let's
where
get
they
the
put
pictures
wood.
out. Let's get the pictures out.
again, part of this, this isn't Josh and Maggie doing the work. Part of this is their employees doing the work, all right? Now, if we present the employees with these photographs and ask them what is occurring here, we could have a very reasonable explanation. What we're trying to do here is trying to explain the situation when, in fact, it could have been their employees that did it, and they could have a very reasonable explanation to explain.
But the employees do what they're supposed to do, guided by their employers.
Absolutely.
That's what we're looking at right here. We're not looking at
Absolutely.
Josh or Maggie, we're looking at, this is a business, and does it need to stop doing something or
But
not?
what I'm saying is, they're saying that this is a truck, again, I don't see it, they're saying this is a truck loaded up with firewood. If they go to the employees and say, the truck, the circumstances, they can give a very reasonable explanation as to why, or what's in the truck. We don't know, we're speculating, we're taking.
Maybe it was mulch.
I don't see it, I don't know what's there. I don't know
Maggie
what's in
said
there.
herself that the truck was driving to Canton with firewood because it needed to be reallocated.
But
That's what
he's
she said
he's
herself.
testified, though, further, that he's actually seen firewood being put in the truck and taken off the site. Forget the pictures.
Well, I don't think,
I think he said he heard it.
and I see.
And then now
leaving the
he said that he
garage, leaving the
saw it.
garage.
He can tell you what he's saying.
And we're telling you that there isn't firewood,
I don't think he can
Go
see
look.
firewood.
If you read the invoices where the wood goes, it's very clear where the wood's going. If you
Send
take a
Joe.
ride by there, you'll see the big piles of wood there in Canton. The only small pile of wood in Milton is for pickup only. I can't be more clear. We invite you to come by tomorrow.
Yeah, but going by tomorrow doesn't tell us
Well, I'm just-
what happens there every day, day in and out, day out when we're not there.
What they're saying
I
is
understand that.
contrary, I mean, it's like.
But we're trying to prove the negative, so that makes it very difficult.
No, I feel like we're getting charged guilty and we're not even doing
I
it.
feel the right, he did do, we understand the process. They have a complaint, they go to Joe. Joe is the building inspector, he's your building inspector, he enforces it. He came out on numerous occasions. I kind of feel like this is Joe's explanation. We are being ambushed with these photos, and I don't know why, you know, you're not
And again,
listening to Joe's testimony.
and again, I mean, part of the problem here is we don't know who's actually driving the truck and what they're doing. We have a truck that's undated going down the street, and like I said, there could be a very reasonable explanation for it, but we don't necessarily have it right now. We can speculate as to what we think it might be, but the fact of the matter is, until we know who's actually in there and who's doing it and why they're doing it, I understand you said that, you know, they're responsible for what they do, but I mean, he could have been dropping someone off at the nursery to do nursery work. We don't, again, you know, it's all speculation. It's all-
I mean, we're going into fairy tale land now.
But that,
It could be this, it could be that,
That's
you know,
exactly
I want to look at what's happening.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I wish it was date stamped, and perhaps they should have showed us the photos before. We could have done our own investigation to figure out what had happened. I thought we were here sort of to go on what Joe had viewed throughout the summer.
Again, I mean, all I can say is, look, they don't have the, other than what's bagged for individual consumption, they don't have it. You can go to the can site, you can go to, they've gone to great pains to try to separate everything as much as they can. And again, there is some overlap with regard to assets, there is overlap with regard to labor, dependent on what is needed. But the landscaping business is being operated out of the, what's it called? The Canton premises. The nursery is being operated out of the Milton property. What they do is somewhat similar, but what, as I understand the order is saying, look, you can't do it on a large scale here, all right? You know,
Can't do it
I'll,
Can't do it here.
well,
Can't do it.
well, I mean,
Not even small scale, you can't do it.
I read one of the decisions and it said that if you could do the wood on
Oh,
camera.
the wood,
all right?
cash and carry, yes.
Exactly. And, you know, and other items associated with the nursery business, but it's not on bulk. Again, I could be wrong, but that's, I thought the decision of May 14th said that they could do the small items for the customers coming in to do it. There's definitely overlap between what the two do. The bulk aspect, all that other stuff is completely separate and can't.
Can we look at this picture one more time? And what it shows is construction material which was not allowed. And the Oldfields agreed to that. They agreed that stone, these pavers or these slate slabs, construction material would not be stored at all. And Joe said it was there when he inspected, but he found no problem with it.
It's not construction material. Sorry.
It doesn't,
I think this is a law of diminishing returns. From my perspective,
I totally agree.
Unless somebody has some new evidence to offer, I'm going to close the public hearings, we're going to deliberate and vote, because this is going nowhere at this point. So, do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Is there any new information, not argument, but new information that anyone wants to present to us in connection with this application? Please do so, otherwise we're going to close the public hearing and deliberate.
Is it from
Okay, so that we are going to close the public hearing, and at this point, we're going to deliberate in open session as to what the appropriate course is to do. The only issue before us tonight is Mr. Prondak's decision dated August 4th, 2014, declining to take further action in the Norfolk Superior Court and finding that Thayer Nursery was then in compliance as of August 4, 2014 with the existing recent zoning board decisions and the corresponding enforcement orders. And in that regard, I note that there were 4 orders that were in the 2 decisions that we're talking about here. The four orders, the first three were in the September 26, 2013 decision, and they said, one, day nursery shall immediately cease and desist from operating a commercial landscaping and commercial construction business on the premises. Two, they shall cease and desist from maintaining or storing vehicles, dumpsters, or other construction-related equipment on the premises incident to the commercial landscaping and construction business. Three, that they'll cease and desist from selling and storing mulch, loam, fertilizer, stone pavers, stone dust, and gravel as part of a commercial landscaping and construction business, and that those kind of materials would be removed from the site. So those were the three that we issued in September, and then in February, that was focused on the firewood issue, and we said that firewood would not be permitted to be sold from the site, and that they would cease and desist from doing so, except that they could sell a limited amount of firewood to customers who came to purchase firewood in an amount to be carried away in their personal vehicles and to be loaded into those vehicles by hand, and you could store sufficient quantities of firewood in the barn that would be necessary to meet the demand. So the question is, at least in my mind, I'll frame it and you guys can comment, but is whether the evidence before us would require the conclusion that there's been a violation of any one of those four orders at this point. And we would have to, well, we're being asked to review Mr. Prondak decision of August 4, 2014, so we would have to vote unanimously that his decision was wrong in its conclusion that there were no violations of any one of these four orders as of that point in time. So I think that's really the issue that's in front of us. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I just interject, I'm sorry, I didn't hear. There was two subsequent orders, one with regard to firewood and one with regard to the use of loom and mulch and stuff on, did you mention that?
There were four different orders, three in the September order, three orders, and then the fourth one was in the February order, and the February order only related to firewood. The September decision had...
But there was another decision as well.
But the
May 14, 2014 decision as well?
And what did that say?
That dealt with, it basically said that you couldn't, what's it called, sell bulk mulch to loom, but they could sell it, let me see. They could use it on their property and sell it in retail. It says permit to sale of merchandise reasonably necessary includes bulk storage and sales. So you can't do bulk storage and sales of the loom, the mulch, stone, sand dust, but it does not permit such.
It does permit.
But does permit such products to be sold at retail in smaller bags, and use and storage of the above materials may be continued by the appellant as necessary for maintenance of the nursery stock.
That's, I recall that. I don't think I have that decision in front of me in the package, but okay, I do recall that. So the hour is late, and I'm gonna cut to the chase on what I think about this. I'm very concerned that the nursery completely and consistently and without exception comply with each element of this order. And I recognize the difficulties attendant to that, but that's the way it is. And presumably you'll address a lot of these outstanding issues in the special permit process, and I think that's great. And I hope that it's properly conditioned and that a lot of these issues are addressed. But based on the evidence that's been submitted to us tonight, I don't feel that I'm in a position to find any clear violations of any of these components of our orders. And I don't think the evidence is sufficient in my mind to overturn Mr. Prondak's decision. I'm not saying that these things don't happen, I just don't think that the evidence before us tonight is sufficient for me to make that kind of a finding, but I'm happy to hear what you guys think on the subject. And Virginia, if you disagree with me, that's okay. So say what you have to say.
I'm disturbed that we are here. I'm disturbed that we've had to be here again, and I don't think that you get complaints when nothing's wrong. And so from the totality of what I've heard tonight, is there any one thing that would put me over the edge? Probably not, but there's a combination of several things that have these reasons or excuses behind them, but they really do come up to something that is making me decide that there is a violation. I think the storage of the stones, the blocks, the dust, the pavers, the slate, and while that might end up being for something on the nursery, I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing that as some storage there that's indicative of not particularly following the rules there. If it is something that's going to be used in the nursery, then use it. Same with the mulch and the loam and stuff. If it's going to be used with the nursery, use it. Don't just store it there. If it's something that hide it. Put it in the barn. Put it somewhere where it's not just it's not making your neighbors upset. I'm not convinced that there's not landscaping business going on there, and so sorry, Joe. I have to say that I'm in disagreement with you.
No, I'm feeling.
I don't think I've seen enough of the evidence to say that there's been a violation. With respect to the same items that you were talking about, it seems reasonable to me that if they're in the process of restructuring the way that the site is being used, the testimony is that that's what the purpose of these materials is. If they are selling, if there was testimony that they were selling these things for commercial purposes from, in connection with commercial landscaping, I would be concerned about it. But to my untrained eye, the things that I see there are consistent with what Ms. Oldfield was saying is possible to be used in terms of in connection with the nursery business. So I haven't seen enough personally to overturn what Mr. Prondak said in his letter, at least not at this time, though I am obviously, as you rightly point out, we're here for some reason. Obviously, folks are upset about what's going on. My impression, not having been directly involved in this case before, but my impression from what I've heard and what I've read in the record and otherwise is that there's been, some ongoing concerns with the extent of the ongoing operations at their nursery. That's obviously giving rise to complaints from the neighbors, and I'm sensitive to that, but I also think that, again, I haven't seen enough yet to overrule what Mr. Prondak found at his site visits. So that's where I'm sort of sitting at the moment.
Is there anything that we could do, let's assume we vote 2-1.
Well, the result is the same with 2-1 as...
It's 1-2, it has to be unanimous, so it doesn't really matter. But are there other things that we might do in a decision? For example, one thought that comes to mind is those materials that we've talked about. And Virginia, your point that, okay, if you're going to use them, is there some specific time period that we could impose that would be reasonable to say, we're not going to overturn Mr. Pronak's decision, but, for example, we want all of that stuff that we see in the picture off the site within 60 days? I mean, is that a reasonable thing for us to do?
I think they use it at different junctions. In other words, Again,
want us to
I
put
mean,
this in a
the-
box, we'll-
The order says the construction-related materials shall be removed from the subject property.
yeah, but I think it doesn't, again, if I'm reading it correctly.
I'm talking about the
Construction
the
materials in
pavers,
connection with
the stuff we see in the picture.
No, I know, but, and again, I just don't want to go down a slippery slope where they're saying you can't have mulch there. I
No,
understand.
mulch is,
I'm not saying-
mulch is,
No,
mulch is different.
There's a difference between trying to accommodate neighbors and trying to work a reasonable thing.
No, I'm not talking about accommodating neighbors. The mulch is a different issue completely. I understand that mulch is used in the nursery business. I understand that. But that stuff that we see in the picture, that's not used in the nursery business. So that stuff could be removed. That's construction related materials from what I can see. And I think we've already ordered that stuff to be removed.
I agree, and again, we can do that or whatever. My only concern with regard to the order is that it does talk about construction related material, but it's, as I read it, it's incident to the commercial landscaping and construction business, if I'm reading it correctly.
Right.
In other words, there's a limited aspect to it. And
Well, whatever that stuff is in the picture is not mulch and it's not loam. It's, I don't know what it's gonna be used for, but we want it to be out of there. I think it should have been out of there already.
But again, I mean, I'll talk to my cabinet.
I'm not, this isn't a negotiation. I'm just
no,
saying to you.
I firmly believe that is used in our nursery business. I will 100% say that. If you want that to be moved, I will move it off. If that will make you feel better.
It's not a question of my feeling better. It's a question of whether you're in
Right.
compliance with the order. So yes,
But
I would like that stuff to be moved off. Does anyone disagree with that?
Is it okay to put it in out of sight? That was one comment that one of the board members made.
Is that out of sight? Is that all right?
If it's all right with you.
All
But we
right.
do use them for Christmas tables. That's the
I
problem.
mean,
Literally, it does have a use. And we're gonna take our tables, wooden frames, and put them right on top of these things.
Let's say that the
Just how
stuff
I
that
read.
appears in that photograph will be removed from sight immediately. Okay?
Well, when you say site, is it S-I-G-H-T or S-I-T-E, as opposed to?
I think he meant
We're all
S-I-T-E.
talking about it, not GHT.
All right, that's what makes
Oh,
sense.
okay.
Anything else
I
that we
wasn't
can
sure.
deal with? I guess, other than to say, again, I'm coming down in your favor on this, but other than to say that I don't care whether it's the truck drivers, whether they're on a frolic of their own, what they're doing. We don't want any wood to be coming off of that site for any purpose. When it gets there in quantities that are sufficient for the limited trade that you're supposed to have, and it doesn't leave there for any other purpose to go anywhere at any time, ever.
No, I agree with that. You know, if they're short at Canton.
That's what
whatever,
the
then
order
they-
says.
No, I agree. If they're short at Canton, it doesn't come back from nursery to go back to Canton. I agree with that.
It's not clear to me that you've been violating the order, but clearly to me, any wood that leaves the site, ITE, for any purpose, is a violation of this order.
Unless,
Unless it's
Unless
a
it's in a
person
car.
putting it in his car,
Right.
or his, whatever.
Truck. It's not a truck.
Okay, I mean, why don't we put this to a vote then? So we're going to stay, as we previously indicated, you vote, Virginia, and I don't mean to put you on the spot on this, but just to be clear, you vote to overturn Joe's decision, and Nick and I vote not to do so.
Correct.
And therefore, his decision stands.
Correct.
Is that correct, Nick? Okay. And I'll draft some kind of a decision relating to this, and I'm going to reiterate certain orders from our previous decisions to make them very clear. We're going to incorporate this element about the stuff that is in this photo, which I may attach to the decision, just so we're clear on it, that's going to be immediately put out of sight. And I guess that's it. So we'll draft that, I'll draft that as quickly as I can. But I think we're done here. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks.